Welcome to the Festival of Storytellers. I thank everybody that's involved with this process, because we know writers need readers and writers need publishers.
Experience is not about the publisher, it is about us, the authors.
Hello, my name is Carl Johnoff, and my pen name, which you'll find on the book, is Kurt Niemann. And that goes back to my very early youth as a child. My best friend's name was Kurt, and the word Niemann, spelled a little differently, means no one. So there's my pen name, Kurt Niemann. And I wrote a book about my career in the criminal justice system, and it's called Badge 411, and I will get that to you somehow. There it is, Badge 411. And just to prove, because I've been asked questions about, well, why 411? That's the actual number of my badge.
That has been retired.
I am retired. I did 32 years in the system. This is my wife, Shirley, and Shirley does keep me straight.
Well, and he's supposed to be talking about the importance of editing the book and why it's a good idea to have somebody else edit.
Yeah, and I want to start off by saying I heard a comment earlier ago that gave me the impression that maybe who's publishing isn't important. It is. Your publisher and the quality of the stuff that your publisher does is critically important, believe me, and I'll probably be able to show you that as time goes on. In any event, we chose Reader's Magnet as the republisher of our book, Badge 411. And I want to tell you, if you're planning on publishing your own book, this is an outstanding group of people to get with. They have done a wonderful job for us in getting the book done. Now, about editing, there's a couple of groups that are going to be important in editing your book. You and, in my case, me and my wife as one group, and the publisher itself. That publisher is critically important. Don't, as an author, please believe that you can go ahead and you can do your own editing and everything's going to be fine, because it really probably will not be. Because what you're going to be reading when you're editing your book is what you believe you said if you dictated, or what you believe you wrote if you wrote it as I did, and then my poor wife had to type that entire book. You need an outside party that is probably not involved in anything that you did, hopefully not involved in the criminal justice system on the offender side anyway. You need a disinterested party to look over what you read. And believe me, the first publishing of this book was loaded, especially in the last part, with errors. And I see somebody is talking to me, or somebody's calling, or
Yeah, somebody text. Anyway, one of the things that we wanted to share was the reason why we changed the title. Unfortunately, the first publishing, um, I was rather naive about my thoughts and feelings about the title of the first publishing, which was the Powder Blue Negligee. And I did not realize that it was going to be put into a category that had nothing to do with criminal justice or juvenile justice. And so that's when we've said that having someone edit and have someone advise you on the titles, like Reader's Magnet did for us on our second publishing, is very, very valuable. And we discovered that, what I want to say, that you can believe something in your heart is really, really appropriate and not realize that, gee whiz, it isn't. So I'll give it back to Carl.
the original title was based on one of the approximately 80 stories that I have in here regarding my term as a probation officer. And when I was a rookie, and my supervisor also served as my training officer, advised me that the first pre-sentence case I was going to work on was on a young man whose record was as thick as Gone with the Wind. And I made a home visit. Let me tell you what a pre-sentence exam is. One of the jobs of a probation officer, because he's an officer of the court, is to work on what an appropriate sentence should be for an individual that's been found guilty of an offense. And my training officer assured me that this particular individual, whose case I was investigating, was in need of a tour with the State Department of Corrections. I got a, oh, well, thank you very much. Thanks.
Yes,
Badge 411 is a great title.
Yes, that is. And that's why one of the reasons why we changed the title, and because that is Carl's actual badge number that got retired. And it is easier to find it in the appropriate category where it should be, rather than the original printing of the book.
Now I'm going to tell you why it got into the wrong category, but I'm not going to tell you the whole story. But I'm going to invite you to read it yourself. But I was advised by my training officer that this young offender was going to be in need of a tour of the State Department of Corrections, and I so informed the individual and the family that this is going to be the recommendation made during the sentencing hearing. And at one point, I was asked to make a home visit to seek out alternative ways to sentence. And when I appeared at the home, the lady who answered the door was wearing, you guessed it, a powder blue negligee. And boy, fortunately, even as a young officer, I had an awareness that I was probably going to be trapped in that one. And I left, and my supervisor really got a lot of laughs over it. And so my wife here said, that's a great title for the book. And I absolutely agreed. And what we discovered was people were thinking that this was a book on porn. It was just this probation officer's writing a porn book. And that was, nothing could be further from the case, I assure you. but that cost me, I'm sure, a lot of possible readers.
So anyway, one of our things is please, when you're writing a book and picking your title, find one that others have really highly believed in and approved of, because had we done that and had we had as much help from our publisher at the time as we have had this time around, things could have been so much different. And so it's very, very valuable to, get input from other people. And as the one person showed on the screen, that Badge 411 is a very easy title to remember. And I have to say, I had gotten some ideas from some patients that I work with on a daily basis. And they were ones that suggested the 411, because they said, that's a title we won't forget. We will never forget that title. So it makes it easy if it's something really true to you, yourself personally.
As time goes by over the next 2 weeks, I'll be talking a lot more about my job as a probation officer. But again, I want to emphasize that this publisher, Reader's Magnet, does an outstanding job. And I just can't praise them high enough in terms of the way they design the format of the book, the way they got into the editing of the book, and took, I think, most all, if not all, the errors out of it.
Okay, there was a question that, I'm sorry, it went away so fast, but was it tough being a probation officer, from a lady named Betty Miller?
I will tell you that for me, and of course, you know, whether your career is successful or not is going to depend entirely on you, your personality, and how well, if it all fits into the career. For me, being a probation officer was an outstanding career. It was 32 years of the best job, if I could call it a job. I would have almost done it for free. When I was a young kid, I met my first probation officer. Now, I met my first probation officer primarily because I was out borrowing stuff I didn't have permission to borrow. And somehow or another, the police didn't believe I was just borrowing. And I ended in front of a judge. And thanks to the judge and my mother, I ended up in the Marine Corps 3 weeks after my 17th birthday. And believe it or not, the Marine Corps, which is an elite military organization, they actually saved my life, because they changed my views and my ways of doing so much. One of the jobs I had while I was in the Corps was a short stint in the military police. And boy, I really got interested in that as well. And the next thing I knew, excuse me, next thing I knew, I was a veteran Marine, and I got a job as a probation officer. It is wonderful. It really is. For me, at least. Find a career that really works for you and your lifestyle.
Okay, this is from Julia. It's always fascinating how the life of an officer can be so colorful. Yes, it can.
Well, I hope I point that out in my book. And I talk about various categories of service that I was in. Of course, I started off my first several months, my first year as a rookie, as a trainee. It requires, being a probation officer, at least in the state of Arizona, requires a minimum of a bachelor's degree in a related field. In my case, it was sociology. I worked for roughly 12 years with inner city gangs in the city of Phoenix. And boy, I talk a lot about them in my book. My own personality dictated that I worked better, and my department agreed with this. I worked better with gangs than I did with other kinds of people, and certainly not the upper class offenders. And believe me, there is no barrier to various classes in terms of being an offender. You can be as nasty an offender as in a millionaire family as you can in a inner city gang family. But for me, I worked really well with gangs and with volunteers that I supervised. There is a category called juvenile incorrigible behavior for kids, for people under the age of 18. That's a whole different thing. Now you're not dealing with crime, you're dealing with family problems, domestic violence, all kinds of, again, I write a lot about that. I dealt, of course, with residential treatment centers and with prisons and jails. Again, a whole different category. What I'm trying to point out is there's a lot of really neat stuff, or at least neat for me, stuff that people like probation officers get into. I spent my last 5 or 6 years designing. Now, I don't mean to brag. I feel a little sensitive about this. I set myself up as a promoter of increased training. You can't get enough training, especially not in the field of criminal justice, I think. You can't get enough training. And I used to harp a lot on administrators about these people need more training. Well, finally, I ended up, excuse me, I ended up designing and writing the state's first juvenile detention officer academy. And I spent my last years being the coordinator of that academy.
Says, is badge 411 more an autobiography or a
pseudo-biography? It's an autobiography, but I want to say this. I'm glad you brought that up, Chloe. I changed the names and places in every story that I wrote. Believe it or not, spending some 3 decades in court several times a week made me really sensitive to stuff like lawsuits. And I decided I don't want to become a defendant in a lawsuit, so that the names of the offenders and the names of the towns and places that the offenses were committed in came out of my head, not off the Arizona map. I hope that makes sense.
Well, and if I can interject here too, before we have to get off here, we still got a few minutes yet, but the fact is that it's so in not being in law enforcement myself, being more in the medical field, I found it extremely valuable what Carl Kurt wrote in the book, and that it was very educational for any of us that have never been in law enforcement, and for anybody that is wanting to pursue this career. It is such a valuable book, and especially after getting it republished under the badge 411, I think it is a treasure and should be used as a study in any kind of training, any kind of whether it's juveniles or maybe even adults. The education and advice that Carl puts into this book from his own experience is mind-boggling to me.
I want to say I do spend a lot of time. I'm retired. I'm an old guy, so I get to spend time wasting time, and I spend a lot of my wasting time on a deal called Facebook. And we all know, those of us who are on Facebook a lot know that everything that you read there is absolutely the unvarnished truth. Absolutely, right? And one of the things that you'll note, and probably in your real life you'll have seen this a lot, you will find people who claim to be experts in any particular field. It could be medicine, it could be law enforcement, it could be flying airplanes, whatever. And they know everything there is to know about anything anybody could possibly need to know about any particular field. And what it turns out is, they really don't know squat. And I'm hoping to dim that a little bit and give people an opportunity to see what it was like for me on the streets, in the detention facilities, at residential placement, in and out of court. I was, like I said, I was in sentencing hearings a couple of times a week, and writing reports, pre-sentence reports for a judge is a real challenging kind of thing. I hope you will buy the book. I hope you will read it and enjoy it.
Oh, Florine, nice to see you too. Or see your words anyway, Florine. Okay, I'm thinking that we might be getting down here. Okay, already I know the answer. I think it's best to tell your fans why you use the name Kurt Niemann. So tell them again, why Kurt?
Okay, when I was very, very young, I was a resident of a Catholic orphanage, and my best friend was a kid named Kurt. It was a German thing.
I got 4 minutes.
And the nuns took care of us, and there's a lot of things that happened, but Kurt and I were close friends, and I never forgot him, and that's how come the name of the pseudonym, name of the author is Kurt. And again, Niemann means no one, because that, believe it or not, really isn't my name. Initially, when the publisher was trying to get a hold of me, they found somebody named Kurt Niemann living in Scottsdale, Arizona, and they were in contact with him. And Kurt got a hold of me and said, "Hey, you know these people?"
No connection whatsoever, but it created a friendship, let me tell you.
Wow.
But anyway, so we're getting down to the last couple of minutes here, but because we needed a name that would not connect any of the kids, any of the adults with us personally. That's a reason for the name too. It would had for everybody's safety, and it just seemed like a very appropriate name since Carl had such a fond memories of Kurt.
I want to give you a final footnote. You're going to be reading about offenders. You're going to be hearing and seeing on the tube, this guy committed this offense, that offense. I want to assure you, and you'll discover this in my book, that not every violator of a criminal law is an insufferable monster that needs to be locked up forever or killed or whatever. I have seen some people turn around and make themselves incredibly good people, and moneymakers too. You just never know.
And that's why one of the things too, I like to impress that the book is so valuable to those who want to go into this profession, because Carl shows all the aspects of the things that he spent so many years doing. And I think we're down to 1 minute, so we're going to have to say goodbye.
Oh, what?
Why? Because it's 1
Well,
minute.
okay. Well, yeah. In that case, bye. Hasta la mañana. We'll see you tomorrow.
Yes, we'll be on tomorrow.